Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to show you how I made a cat-proof hedgehog feeding station that actually works. And the reason that I made this was because of this. One specific cat who has been relentless in accessing the food and water I put out for the hedgehogs who visit my garden. Now, this is a well-fed neighbour's cat. And we know that European hedgehogs are struggling. So of course, I want to do everything I can to help the hedgehogs, not fund a feline's secret late night dining habit. And this turned into a bit of a battle. Firstly, I provided a small shelter for the food and the hedgehog. This was really just to keep the rain off it. But at this time, a couple of neighbours' cats were visiting. So I added a temporary makeshift corridor to the shelter, and this actually deterred one of the cats. However, the black and white opportunist kept accessing the food. Next, I added a corridor, which was the recommended size for a hedgehog, whilst also supposedly being too small and long for a cat to be able to or to want to venture into. However, our visitor, whilst slightly put out, was not to be deterred. So at this point, the poor hedgehog was arriving to find the food already gone most nights. I also wanted a nice, sturdy hedgehog feeder that would last. And so, with some research and some guidance from my dad, who is the DIY expert, I made this feeding station. But we even ended up having to make some tweaks to this, which was already above and beyond the cat prevention advice to stop our monochromatic friend, or should I say foe. And I will show you him accessing the food even in our original build a bit later. But don't worry, this hedgehog feeding station is now tried and tested. And I will show you what to do if you too have neighbourhood cats stealing your hedgehog feed. Okay, so let's build the hedgehog feeding station. For this build, you will need a drill, a screwdriver or electric screwdriver, a tape measure, a ruler, a Stanley knife or scissors, a pencil, a hasp and staple lock, hinges, felt, a staple gun or hammer and felt nails, and a sander or sandpaper. You'll also need screws and a table or hand saw. And in terms of the wood itself, you will need outdoor treated timber. We went for a thickness of 1.5 centimetres and a width of 20 centimetres. And you will need 2 pieces at 77 centimetres, which will be the front and the back of the feeding station, and 4 pieces at 40 centimetres, which will be the 2 ends and the 2 dividers in the feeding station. And finally, a piece of outdoor plywood. We went for 18mm thickness, measuring 44 centimetres by 80 centimetres, and that is for the lid. Now, these materials are for the standard feeding station, which will keep out most, if not all, of your local cats. But there are a couple of modifications that we ended up making. 1, to make room for a camera installation, and 2, because despite preventing all other cats, the star of this video did still make it inside the feeding station. So we made an additional modification which I will tell you about later in this video, and for which you will need a few additional wood pieces. Step 1, cut the hedgehog doorways. So take the 4 pieces of 40 centimetre timber that have a width of 20 centimetres, and on one corner of each piece, measure 13 centimetres in from the short edge and draw a line. Measure 13 centimetres up from the bottom edge and draw a line across to meet the first line. So you're essentially going to be cutting out a square from each piece, measuring 13 centimetres by 13 centimetres. Then use sandpaper or a sander to smooth all the cut edges. Step 2, assemble the feeding station. For this step, you can take the 4 pieces of wood that you have just cut squares out of, plus the 2 pieces of wood measuring 77 centimetres in length. and lay them out. This is what the finished station will look like, and as you can see, the idea is to avoid having doorways directly opposite each other, creating a more enclosed route that requires turning corners. The two outer wall pieces should have their doorway openings at the same end, and the two inner divider pieces should also have their doorway openings at the same end, but at the opposite end to the outer pieces. Before assembly, the first step is to drill all pilot holes in the two 77cm pieces. And there is some difference in the screw positions to match the alternating doorway layout. For the first 77cm piece, measure 1 centimetre in from each end and drill holes at 3 centimetres, 6 centimetres, 14 centimetres and 17 centimetres. This gives 4 holes at each end. Then measure 20 centimetres in from each end and drill holes at 3 centimetres and 6 centimetres down. This gives 2 holes at the inner position. Now take your second 77cm piece and you'll be drilling this in the opposite arrangement. So measure 1 centimetre in from each end and drill holes at 3 centimetres and 6 centimetres down. So there are only 2 holes at each end. Then measure 20 centimetres in from each end and drill holes at 3, 6, 14 and 17 centimetres down so that there are 4 holes at each inner position. Now it's just a case of standing up the pieces and screwing them together. You could get someone to help you hold them together or use a clamp. And so the end pieces and the inner pieces with doorways cut will of course be lined up with the holes accordingly. You will attach the full sides where there are 4 holes and the sides with the doorways cut where there are 2 holes. Step 3, make the lid. Lay the felt on a flat surface with the back facing up and place the plywood previously cut to size and lay this on top of the felt. Fold one edge of the felt over the lid and check that there is enough felt on the opposite side to also fold over. And you need to fix the felt to the underside using either a staple gun or felt nails. And you can repeat this on all sides. Then you'll need to cut a small slit in each corner to help the felt fold neatly at the corners. Step 4, attach the lid. So place the lid or roof on a flat surface with the inside facing up and position the feeding station frame upside down on top of it. Make sure it's central. You can then fix the hinges to the lid and the back of the box. Decide which side of the lid will have the hasp and then fix the hasp plate to the lid using screws. Fix the staple plate to the front piece of the box so the hasp can lock over it. You can test that this moves freely and can be secured. This is a standard feeding station completed, which will likely deter the majority of cats and other visitors. But my final hedgehog station ended up looking a little different. So the first customization I'll talk about briefly. As you can see, I moved from a flat roof to a sloping roof. The only reason for this was so that I could fit a camera inside. So by lifting one side of the roof, I was able to fit the camera at a good angle to capture the full inside chamber of the feeding station and also to tuck all of the wires safely out of the way. If you decide on a sloping roof too, it is simply a case of increasing the height of either the front or back of the station and adding triangles onto the sides at the angle you would like the roof to be. The second customization, and the most important one, came after seeing the cat still reach the hedgehog food. Yes, he wove in through the alternating doorways, squeezed himself into the chamber and ate the food. He did this a couple of times, so we reduced the height of the 4 doorways by a few centimetres. unfortunately he was still able to get in, and so we built 2 tunnels. And if you want your station to be extra cat proof, I would recommend adding these tunnels also. So for these tunnels, you will need 2 pieces of wood measuring 40 by 10 centimetres, 2 measuring 40 by 12 centimetres, and 2 squares measuring 10 by 10 centimetres. And for these, a thickness of about 1.5 to 2 centimetres. The wider pieces, so the 40 by 12 centimetre pieces, will be the tunnel roofs, and the 40 by 10 will be the lengths. The squares simply close the tunnel at the ends closest to the doorways that you are putting the tunnels against. This makes it so that there is another turn in the journey to the food. And also this tunnel is lower than the other doorways at 10 centimetres. Now this is lower than the recommended height for hedgehogs, but I've seen some pretty large hedgehogs walk through these tunnels with no problem, and it's the only thing that will work to keep out determined cats. Running the tunnel down the length of the feeding station also makes it a longer journey for any cat who might be thinking of trying to squeeze in. I'm pleased to say that after adding these tunnels, the cat can no longer access the food and the hedgehogs can. Because of the order that I built this, there is a small gap above the tunnel because the first door is higher than the tunnel, but this doesn't impact anything. If you're building with the tunnels in mind, you may want to lower this outside door to 10 centimetres high. I actually saw one hedgehog visitor climb onto one of the tunnels to sniff in through that gap the other day, so he was likely smelling that there was food in there. And the tunnels worked really well. The cat tried to get into the feeding station after I had attached the tunnels and couldn't get in. It's the first time I've seen that cat not be able to access food. So the feeding station is a success. And I would definitely recommend this if you've been struggling with a tricky cat visitor. And that is it. I really hope you found this video interesting and or helpful. I have some plans to make the front of the feeding station into a cozy fantasy style tavern, so I will post my video making that as and when it's complete. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.